Hey all, I wanted to make this video rather than write any posts or anything. But recently my wife and I were on sabbatical. It was a short sabbatical. And during that time, we reconnected with God in such a mighty and powerful way. Over the last year, between work and other things, I let a lot of resentment and fear and anger and all those things just build up and take me out of where I actually loved. So as we began our sabbatical, we started studying the Bible together. We started studying the Bible individually, my wife and I. And it really, a lot of it kept up with the theme that our pastor was speaking on at the time, which was faith in God. Now, one of the questions that my pastors had for me in our meetings and mentorship has been, what is holding you back? So here's the thing. I made a video a while back, why I'm not a senior pastor. And a lot of that was complacency that I had. And I understand certain things. I love our home church. I love the people there. I love the men and their wives who I've been serving with for the last 7 years there. It has just been an awesome experience. But I've also known where I'm supposed to go. I know that God's plan for us is not at Meeting House. And it's been a difficult understanding of that. So today I met with my senior pastor. I love the man. He has been a great mentor, a great friend. God's love and grace just shines out of him. And to my surprise, it was almost as if excuse me, bronchitis lingers for weeks. But it's one of those things where God prepared him for what I had to say. And so it's like this. We read 2 books on top of our own personal and couples Bible studies. And both books really helped us. Both books really opened our eyes to what had to be said. Now, The first book is called All In, and I just want to say this. I'm not trying to sell these books to anyone. I'm just going to describe them. The first book was called All In, and it really kept that theme of the sermons. It really kept stuff that we needed to hear. It really opened our eyes. It was talking about, do you have faith in God? Are you willing to give up all that you have to follow God wherever He calls you to? And we realized our lead pastor and his wife have led that example. They came from the South up here to New England to plant a church. They left all that they had behind, her family, his family. They came up here with 2 kids and, little of nothing, and just had their faith in God to lead them and to guide them to where God was calling them. Likewise, we've had another couple who, by God's grace, not only gave us premarital counseling and married us, but they've kind of followed us over to Meeting House, and they've been serving there for the last 4 years. And so their example was the same. They came from the South and came up here to plant a church, and they had 3 kids that they had to take care of, and even some of their plans just fell through. And as those plans fell through, they still had to put their full faith and trust in God, that God would see them through where they were. And so God has given us their examples, their mentorship, their love, their dedication, their mentorship, all this stuff to help us reach that point. So, I've been in ministry for 18 plus years. And I've always been very satisfied with where I'm at because I've been very complacent. And complacency can be a good thing. Let me say that. Complacency can be a good thing, because if you're where you're supposed to be, then being complacent is a good thing, because you're there, you're where you're supposed to be, and you're not going to go anywhere. But at the same time, if God is calling you to do something and you're not willing to move because you're complacent, you're not going to be happy, you're not going to be satisfied. And that's been the struggle for a few years now. I guess I have to kind of break it down to how I told my lead pastor. I've been sort of the selfish prince. I'm a pastor's kid. I'm a grand pastor's kid. My grandfather and my father both were pastors. My dad became a Christian a few years after I was born, but he followed the call into ministry, and prior to that, my mother was the rebellious pastor's child, and when I was born, my mother had preeclampsia and toxic shock, and I was born cesarean, and I was only given an 8% chance to make it through the night that I was born. And my mom prayed to God turned back to the God that she had turned her back on and said, if you let him live, he will be yours to serve in ministry. A lot like Hannah with Samuel. And so, I've kind of lived with that thing of, okay, you know, I can do this anytime I want. I could go to school and take my religion degree anytime I want. And so it took me 10 years after graduation to go to college to begin that process. And it's been almost another 10 years since I earned that degree. But I have served. But I've been that selfish prince. I've not been willing to follow God where he wants me to be. And like my pastor said today, you know, you can come up with a lot of excuses. But now you gotta realize there are things that God is there. You know, I've realized it. There are things that God has taken away from us. And both of us were in agreement that over the last 7 years, it's been a struggle. And while I want to be comfortable in the place that we're living, you know, God gave us a great apartment 2 years ago. And I've loved it. But at the same time, I don't believe it's where God wants us permanently. I don't believe it's where God's calling is. Now, do I know where that is? Do I know what place? No. And so that's the thing. We came to an agreement, my wife and I, that we both felt God's call to go into ministry, to not be in the way that we've been in ministry, but that God's called me to pastor a church, for Natalie to minister alongside of me as that pastor's wife. And it's a scary thought in many ways, and that's kind of like what we talked about, you know, you can use that as an excuse to not move forward, or you can really put your full trust in God, your full faith in God, and go on this journey that you are never going to regret. And so that's where these books that we've read were, All In and The Land Between. Now, The Land Between talked about, you know, being at this point, and you know you're supposed to go to this point, but that zone in between, you can allow bitterness, you can allow resentment, you can allow all this stuff that keeps you held up there, or you can take those experiences that you're having, and rather than letting the resentment grow and, you know, the frustration and all that stuff, the bitterness, you can take that, take the lessons, and get to that point. And that's where we've been at. We've been here for the last 7 years. And, you know, I'm not taking anything away from Meeting House. Again, we love Meeting House. We love the people. We love that body. We would do so much for that body because of so much that they've done for us. But that's the thing, you know, the pastors, the people that we've met over the last 7 years have given us tools and lessons and everything to help us get to this point. And we were at this point at one time, and this is our old church. This is the church we were at before. And it was the same thing. It was the same, we got into a middle zone before we went where we were supposed to be. So it really is an awesome time for us, because we're in this Christmas season, and I have always loved Christmas. Growing up, I have always loved the experience of Christmas, in the church. But there's a lot that I've learned over these last years. A lot of the traditions and everything that we hold on to, there are things that we can change, things that, it's just an exciting thing. There are things that we can add and help people grow and help get people that need to be in the church there. But that's the thing. So, I'm gonna ramble on. So I want to close this off. I want to just get to the point. So, my pastor said it's time. He knows it's time. He believes it's time for both of us. He's seen it. He's experienced. He's waited for us to come to this decision together. Which is funny, because the other pastor always said that, when the time came, they were just going to kick us out. But, it's time for us to go. And like I said, I don't know where that's going to be. I have grown up in New England. I have lived in 3 of the 6 New England states. I have stayed on the East Coast of New England. I grew up. I am a Bostonian of Bostonians, to paraphrase Paul. I grew up with my dad and my mom both being Bostonians, both having lived in Boston. I can call West Roxbury one of my hometowns because I lived there. That was the first city, the first place I ever lived was my grandparents' home in West Roxbury. So I am a Bostonian. And that's the thing. I grew up there. I lived there. This area is just so familiar to me. And, even just going out west, out to Worcester or Springfield is foreign to me. And that was the thing I had talked to my pastor about. But he had pointed out one thing, that my wife and I are very adventurous. We've even though we've struggled over these last 7 years, God has blessed us with the opportunity to travel 2 of those years, for a vacation. Once to Washington, D.C., and the other one to New York City. And just the fact that we enjoyed it and we loved it together, that was the thing that, even he pointed out, that it was something that shows that we're ready together to go anywhere where God calls us. So like I said, I don't know where that is. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know where that's going to be, but at this point in time, my wife and I have been praying in earnest over the last 3 weeks since we really came to that decision. Every day, we have been praying for that church, wherever it is, praying for the congregation, praying for their hearts, praying for the community, praying for just wherever that is, that they will be ready to accept us. We've been praying for ourselves that we'll be ready to go and serve and love these people and love the community and, love the souls that need to hear the gospel of Christ. We've prayed for our own church, that in the transition of moving on, that they wouldn't be bitter or resentful. And I'm not saying that the pastoral staff would be, because they would know that it's time to go. But life is weird, and some people don't understand things. So that's been our thing. We wanted to pray that God would prepare them for us to eventually go. And so that's it. We're ready. We're ready to go and serve and do what God wants us to do. It's going to be an interesting journey. I don't know where it's going to land us. It could be 2 towns over. It could be 2 states over. It could be 2 miles away or 2,000 miles away. But it's me and my wife and God in this journey. And that's all that counts. I mean, I know I'm going to have prayer and support from a lot of people, from you guys, from our home church, but it's one of those things that I'm just excited to see where this is going to go. So